Did you know that 73% of prospective employees won't apply or accept a position at a company that doesn't offer modern work experiences? If you want to learn more, visit vmware.com/employee-experience. But I'm going to give you another reason to visit that page, and I have to confess that this is one of the coolest podcast sponsorships I've done with my friends at VMware, because they are actually giving away copies of my upcoming book, The Future Leader. And this is where I interviewed over 140 CEOs around the world to figure out what it will take to be a leader in the next decade and beyond. They're giving away a limited number of copies, so if you want one for free, then again, make sure to check out vmware.com/employee-experience to claim yours.
I married subsequently a computer scientist, but he was not an AI expert. His expertise was in algorithms and complexity, but he loved AI, and we would have lots of fun talks over dinner every night. When I started to think that I might write the history of artificial intelligence, I thought, ooh, can I do this? I'm an English major. What do I know about this stuff? And yet I knew that they'd help me. And in fact, that same guy who said artificial is machines doing, something that we'd say is intelligent behavior if a human did it, that same guy said, it's a great idea, and your friends will help you. That, by the way, was Ed Feigenbaum, who's now professor emeritus at Stanford in computer science and the father of expert systems. Now we're just wonderful, close friends.
That's Pamela McCorduck, author of 10 books, and the newest one comes out this month and is titled, This Could Be Important, My Life and Times with the Artificial Intelligentsia. Now, what's really interesting is that before I even got connected with Pamela, I was using a quote of hers that I absolutely love about artificial intelligence, and I want to read it for all of you. And it is as follows. Artificial intelligence began with an ancient wish to forge the gods. And I really love that quote, and it's something that I have used in a lot of my presentations and in a lot of discussions with people. And Pamela has been working in the field of artificial intelligence since 1960. She's a leader not only in the field of AI, but also when it comes to the history of AI, which is in itself a very fascinating subject. Pamela witnessed the first developments of AI, and she has interacted with and was mentored by many of the fathers of AI. My conversation with Pamela was truly amazing, and I learned a lot about the history of AI, as well as her thoughts on the current state of artificial intelligence as well. In this episode, you will hear how Pamela got started in this space, what symbolic intelligence is and why students of today need to focus on it, the impact that AI will have on the future of work, how the current industrial revolution is different than the first one, and so much more. This is really an amazing conversation, and I hope you enjoy.
If you're one of these people who are getting aced out of your work because a machine can do it faster, cheaper, and better, that's not good. If you're somebody who gets the benefit of that, it's very good.
This is Jacob Morgan, best-selling author, speaker, and futurist. Welcome to the Future of Work podcast, where every week I speak with C-level executives, business leaders, and authors to explore how the workplace is changing and what the future of work is going to look like. The goal of this show is to give you the insights, the ideas, and the inspiration to help future-proof your career and your organization. If you want to get access to more content, such as podcast transcriptions and information on working with me or having me keynote your next event, you can visit my website at thefutureorganization.com. If you want to take your education even further by getting access to courses that explore these themes in more depth, then check out futureofworkuniversity.com. Also, if you get a few seconds, please rate and review the podcast on iTunes or whatever your preferred channel is. It really helps the show, and I personally appreciate it, since the podcast does take quite a bit of effort to produce. In case you're interested in sponsoring the podcast or working with me, my email is jacob@thefutureorganization.com. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Future of Work podcast. My guest today is Pamela McCorduck. She's an AI expert. She's written a bunch of books, including a brand new one called This Could Be Important: My Life and Times with the Artificial Intelligentsia. Pamela, thank you for joining me.
Oh, hi, Jacob.
I was actually, when I got the email from your team about having you as a podcast guest, I was like, oh man, I'd love to talk to Pamela because I gave a talk on AI and jobs. I think it was last year, and I actually used one of your quotes, and it's one of my favorite AI quotes ever. And you said, AI came about because of our desire to forge the gods. And I thought that's one of the coolest quotes on AI I've ever seen. So we'll definitely talk about that.
Sure.
But why don't we start with some background information about you? You have such a fascinating history. How did this all begin?
It began in the way that small things change your life utterly. I was an English major at the University of California, Berkeley, and I was going to graduate in January. And two young assistant professors who knew me because I was working my way through school by typing in the business school, they came up to me and they said, hey, we know you're going to be off for 9 months until you go back to school and graduate school in September. Would you like to work on our book? And I said, yes. Oh, and what's it about? And they said, well, it's about artificial intelligence. Now, this is the fall of 1960, the winter of 1960. And I had heard the term because I was typing these course outlines and whatnot in the business school, but I had no idea what it really meant. So I said to one of these guys, what's artificial intelligence? And he thought for a moment. He said, well, I would define it as machines doing something that if a human did that, we would say, oh, that's intelligent behavior. And it was a wonderful introduction to AI. And I'm afraid I fell in love with the field and I've been hanging around ever since. Wow,
that's quite a while ago. And so since that time, I know you've had the opportunity to work with a lot of the fathers of AI. So
yes.
Did you then study artificial intelligence, or how did you get so involved and ingrained in the field?
Again, it was kind of osmosis. I married subsequently a computer scientist, but he was not an AI expert. His expertise was in algorithms and complexity, but he loved AI, and we would have lots of fun talks over dinner every night. When I started to think that I might write the history of artificial intelligence, I thought, ooh, can I do this? I'm an English major. What do I know about this stuff? And yet I knew that they'd help me. And in fact, that same guy who said, artificial is machines doing something that we'd say is intelligent behavior if a human did it. That same guy said, it's a great idea, and your friends will help you. That, by the way, was Ed Feigenbaum, who's now professor emeritus at Stanford in computer science and the father of expert systems. Now we're just wonderful, close friends. But in those days, I was pretty worried that I wouldn't know how to do this. Luckily, that's exactly what happened. I would just kill myself to read the papers and understand what they meant. And I say in the book that I often read through a scrim of tears. It was so frustrating. But I learned. And when I didn't know, I didn't understand, these people would drop everything and say, let me try and explain to you. It was a fabulous, fabulous thing.
Wow. Yeah, I wish, or I'm sure most people wish they had somebody like that in their lives today, in their careers and their jobs. No. So can you give us a sense of what was it like at the very beginning of all these conversations on AI? Because you were kind of there from ground zero. You saw everything start from nothing and kind of boom into this madness that it is. So what was going on in the 60s when these conversations were just beginning?
Two separate streams, Jacob. First, there was the science. The scientists who were doing it were gifted, dedicated, eager to make it happen. They were a very small minority. Their colleagues in computer science, not to mention the rest of the scientific field, thought it was absolutely nuts. They were nuts. And so they coined this term outside the field, the artificial intelligentsia. It was a very contemptuous phrase. I'm reclaiming it in my book as something that is okay. But this was a field that just seemed like it was totally fringe. What are they doing? What are they thinking? No. And I'll give you an example of that. In 1975, we're now talking 15 years after I first heard about AI, the National, I don't remember if it was the National Academy of Sciences or the National Science Foundation. Anyway, they went to the leaders of computer science in general and said, you've been in existence now for 10 years, and we'd like a progress report. And the progress report was put together by a committee of the great people, great men in those days. And
so no women in AI in those days?
Hardly. If there were, I didn't know them. No, okay. I would have known them. No.
Yeah.
So they put together this report, and it did not mention AI. And one of the leading people in computer science, Donald Knuth, who's well known for his books on algorithms, is so well known that they're just referred to as Knuth. Did you look it up in Knuth? Knuth said, you cannot do this. You must include artificial intelligence. Now, if an AI guy had said this, it wouldn't have happened. But because Knuth, with his great prestige, said, you've got to do this, it was included. But that's the kind of, I won't say hostility, but certainly skepticism that existed outside the small band of people who were doing it.
So was the general sort of vibe that this is crazy, it's like a waste of time, you people
and a waste of money.
So everybody thought that.
This was big money in those, by comparison. And these guys were saying, we need the money, we need the processing, we need this, we need that. There was a great deal of resentment.
And what was it like doing research on AI in those days? Because today, obviously, computers are different. It's just a completely different world. So was it like entire warehouses just devoted to big computing machines and people in lab coats and clipboards? Like what was the environment like?
No, not quite. But big mainframes, certainly. They didn't need warehouses for them, but they were all around. And at Stanford, where I really got saturated with the AI way of living, and at Carnegie Mellon, where I eventually went with my husband, they were able to fit the machines into basements, so it was not quite warehouses. But yeah, they needed tremendous amounts of space and tremendous amounts of power and all those things.
In the 60s, so people were thinking, okay, you guys are crazy. And then what was going on over the next couple of years? Because I know there have been a couple like AI winters. There have also been a couple AI, I don't know what they were called. The golden areas, the golden eras of AI.
Yeah, these are funny phrases to me because let's talk about the history. The AI guys actually were doing pretty well, and they were nailing one problem after another. By the mid-1950s, the first AI program was up and running, and it was a singularity, if I can use that phrase.
Do you remember what it did? Like, what was the first problem?
Oh, sure. It was called the logic theorist, and it proved theorems in Whitehead and Russell's whatever that wonderful book is. And, very arcane stuff. But it could do it. And it did better than Whitehead and Russell in proving one or two proofs. And in fact, Herb Simon, who was one of the guys who created this, sent the new proof to Lord Russell, who laughed and said, yeah, well, good for it.
Interesting. Okay, so sorry, go ahead. I was just really curious what that first problem was.
So, bit by bit, pieces are slowly being put together. And by the 1970s, there were some real breakthroughs. By the 1980s, the entrepreneurs were moving in and they were thinking, okay, we can monetize this. Well, it was much too early for the field to be monetized. And there was a lot of embarrassment and failures of IPOs and things like that. And that's where the phrase, the AI winter, came about, because the research that was being done couldn't be monetized. I took time to look up all the papers that were published during the 1980s, just one by one. And what the science was doing was laying out the fundamentals of the field. But there was no way you could monetize it.
People couldn't figure out how to make money from it, huh?
That's right.
Huh. Interesting. And so you mentioned that the first problem that was solved was proving these theorems. And then you said in the 70s there were some major breakthroughs. And I know this kind of started with expert systems before. And so can you talk a little bit about what the expert systems were and how that kind of evolved?
Oh, I want to say that one of the big breakthroughs in the 70s was speech understanding. We knew how to understand something that talked word by word by word. But continuous speech, as you and I are having, that was really hard. No punctuation marks, no way of signaling end of sentence, anything like that. Okay. The expert systems were, in fact, the brainchild of my friend Ed Feigenbaum. And what he and his partner, Penny Nee, were doing was teasing out the expertise of humans and turning it into executable computer code so that you could have an automatic expert perform these tasks, which either the expert was going to die, which happened, or was so expensive other firms couldn't afford to hire the person, and so on and so forth. So this was a really great breakthrough. And we sometimes think, well, now where are expert systems now? And the answer is they're all over. We just don't call them that anymore. The whole notion that it was information, not reasoning, it was knowledge, not reasoning, that made these work was Feigenbaum's great insight.
But all of these things, though, I guess if you were to kind of compare it to today's AI, it seems like the 60s, 70s, 80s, it was more like just computing power, right? Like it wasn't artificial intelligence the way you would call it today. It was just kind of massive computing power, crunching things and giving you information, or was it somewhat similar to what we're seeing today?
No, yeah, of course you needed the technology to make it work. But machine learning that we have today is a product of technology. That set of algorithms were developed in the mid-'80s, but they couldn't come to fruition until we had the technology of the last 10 years. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So we're using some of the stuff that was developed in the 80s, but we just didn't have the technology to use it at the time, so we're using it now.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, very cool. I didn't know that. So when you look at where we are today, you kind of look at this history of AI, have we come a long way? Because it seems like we've been working on this for, 60 years. Are we there? Are we where we need to be?
We're not there. Of course we're not there. But, we've come a long way. We sure have. But as Marvin Minsky, who was one of the founding fathers at MIT, said to me once, look how long physicists have been working on physics. They have a vision that goes on for centuries. do we really think intelligence is easier than physics? No. So we have a long way to go.
And when you say long way to go to what? Like, what is it that we are trying to do in the AI field? How do we know we're done? We've made it. We've achieved. Like, is there an end point, or is this just a never-ending kind of like, forever journey?
Yeah, I think it's never ending. Well, human intelligence is never ending. I won't say I'm smarter than my grandparents, but I know things that they couldn't have known, and on it goes.
Before I hit record, I was asking you about the title of the book, This Could Be Important, and you said that at the time, people would just say that this is crazy, and you actually had to tell them, hey, this might be something that we should be paying attention to.
Yeah, this book is a memoir of sorts, and it starts from the time that AI really grabs me by the gut and goes on. So my husband was the chairman of the computer science department at Carnegie Mellon in the 70s. And in the late 70s, he was called to Columbia University because the Ivy League was among the last to establish computer science departments. And so he established the computer science department at Columbia, where he earned his PhD. And of course, we moved to New York City, which I loved because I'm a writer, and that was the writer's company town in those days. Anyway, I got into all kinds of literary circles because I still thought of myself as a literary person. And I would run into various public intellectuals, and I would say, this artificial intelligence, this could be important. And they would look at me as if I were absolutely nuts and laugh. I mean, what else could they do? Laugh. Please.
Crazy.
So that's where, and it went on for 2 decades at least.
What is artificial intelligence? I know, there's a lot of talk about it, a lot of debate, lots of articles, but I still feel like people are having a hard time trying to grasp and understand what it actually is and what it means. How would you explain it to someone?
I think I'd use that very old dictum that Ed Feigenbaum gave me in 1960, which is artificial intelligence is machines doing something that if a human did them, we would say that's intelligent behavior. Now, it turns out that our definitions of intelligence have expanded tremendously in the last 20 years, let's say. We're talking about octopus intelligence. We're talking about the intelligence of slime molds. I mean, this would have been unheard of. And yet, there is really good argument that these organisms, they have intelligence. It may not be the intelligence we recognize as human intelligence, but when you start defining what intelligence might be, they exhibit it. Okay. I heard the great primatologist Franz de Waal. He's been studying primates forever, and he's done some fabulous work. In a lecture at the 92nd Street Y in New York, artificial intelligence told us what questions we should be asking about primate intelligence. I thought that was wonderful.
Interesting. Yeah, it's so does it mean it's kind of subjective as far as how we define artificial intelligence? Because I suppose different people would have different ways of sort of saying what they would say is intelligent if a human did it. For example, playing chess, on our computers, we have those little things that scan our Wi-Fi networks if we have problems. We have our Echo devices. Are those all in the same kind of bucket?
Let's say they're on the spectrum, okay?
Fair enough. So they're all kind of on the spectrum.
Yeah, but the spectrum is really long. And we like to think at the far end is human intelligence, and at the other end is maybe slime mold intelligence. As we move gradually along the spectrum, we see things that we do as human beings that are the result of our evolution. We know fight or flight is evolution. We don't think about it. It's not intelligence. It's just the way we are. And we share that with our animal forebears and so on. When we get to the far end of the spectrum, where we're talking about symbolic intelligence, that's much harder. And that is an almost empty field right now, because catching up with the early, what you might say, evolutionary parts of intelligence has been easier to do, or at least it's lent itself to that, rather than symbolic intelligence.
What is, or how would you explain symbolic intelligence?
Using symbols. I don't mean to be flip about that, but one of the most interesting programs for me is at MIT. I'm afraid the chief scientist has just suddenly died, but he believed that that storytelling was a marker of human intelligence. That only humans, so far as we know, arrange our world in terms of stories. What is your story? How did you get interested in AI? What's going to happen next? Okay, we don't think the lower animals do that.
I would. That would be a little bit creepy, honestly, if they, if I saw my dogs downstairs, kind of like, I would
think about it, Jacob. Think about it.
Yeah, I would be a little worried. One of the things that you mentioned in your book, and I thought this was a really great way to think about it, you had these three sort of characteristics of intelligence, which I think were, you have to have ideas, you have to have goals, calculate best choices, and you have to adapt to needs. Can you talk about kind of these criteria of intelligence?
They're very general, but you can see that this applies to a cell, which has needs. It needs to nourish itself. It looks for nourishment. It has goals, which is to perpetuate itself. And what was the third one? Adapt.
Yes, adapt.
Adapt. And it adapts to changing circumstances. And these are the beginnings of intelligence. There's much more to go. That's why I say we're not there. This is going to be a long project.
Yeah. Well, when you look at today, 2019, 2020, what are you seeing with AI? I mean, have we come a long way? What should we know about AI in kind of the present day?
We should know that a lot of the breakthroughs, quote unquote, that we hear about are really new applications of machine learning, which is great. They're so useful. We're so happy to have them. I'm not denigrating that at all. But we aren't making much progress in the symbolic parts of our intelligence. And that's where the students of today will probably move into. That's where they'll be able to make their mark.
And so, just to make sure I understand, so when you say moving into kind of the symbolic intelligence, does that mean AI having the ability to tell stories?
For example, tell stories, to understand the concept of decency, to understand the concept of indecency, bigotry, and so on. Yes.
Okay, so emotional intelligence, it seems like.
Those happen to be two things that sound like emotional intelligence, and I think they are.
Okay.
But really, we're talking about symbolic intelligence.
Okay.
I just came from a movie on Reconstruction after the Civil War, and if you look at the goals of the white supremacists and how they adapted, they were very intelligent. It was just very ugly.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, today it seems like you see AI applications in so many different areas. I've had podcast guests talk about how they're using it in finance. We see how it's being used in self-driving cars, in medicine and healthcare, in pretty much every every industry that you can think of. So, and I think, who was it? Andrew Yang said AI is the new electricity. Do you see this as being kind of just like...
Yes, he did, and I think that's right.
Yeah, so do you see AI as being kind of just the new platform that runs the world?
Well, if you put it that way, it gives a kind of agency to AI that I'm not quite ready to give AI. But I see it as fundamental to the human enterprise. Fundamental.
And it's everywhere.
It's everywhere, and it's faster than our poor little feeble human minds can be.
Yeah.
And it's wider. That first theorem proving program that I told you about, the reason it did better than two smart guys like Russell and Whitehead is because it could search further. It had a bigger search space, as the technical term has it. Okay, this is going to be ubiquitous. We're going to have helpers that can search a bigger search space than we can and come up with better answers on account of it.
The big question I know that we always hear around AI is what it means for jobs and careers and for us as human beings. And I know this is like a very, very broad question that can go in so many different angles. But what do you think that we're going to start seeing over the next maybe, I don't know, let's say 5-10 years as far as the impact that AI might have on jobs and careers? Are you thinking lots of disruption?
Major disruptions, major. And I want to make a distinction between, say, the first industrial revolution, several distinctions between the first industrial revolution, which was certainly as disruptive as anything we'd seen, and this disruption. And that is this: the first industrial revolution did away with highly skilled jobs. It decomposed the weaving process, let's say, which was something very skilled workers did. It decomposed them so that the machines could do simpler tasks, and the machines could be run by not so skilled people. This had the effect of running the weavers out of business, hence the Luddites. Ned Ludd was a weaver. And at the same time, it gave rise to a class of people who weren't very well educated, weren't very well skilled, but now had gainful employment. And this was, all in all, a good thing. Bad for the weavers, bad for the people it replaced, but good for people who were otherwise starving every winter, agricultural workers and so on. Okay, this revolution is different in that the jobs that it produces, and it will produce jobs, they're going to go to skilled, very skilled people. And unless we are willing to retrain scads and scads of obsolescent people who do tasks, they're going to be out of work. And we're going to have to deal with that. It's also happening much faster than the Industrial Revolution, but your other guests must have told you that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I get some guests who are very optimistic about the future of AI, who say that, everything will be fine, new jobs will be created, we've seen this before, everything will be okay. And then sometimes, for example, I had Maria Bartiromo, who's a Fox News anchor, and she has a special, fairly new one, about AI where she traveled the country, and her message was much more, I don't want to say about fear, but very serious repercussions are coming. And I think people are trying to figure out which side of the spectrum should we be on. Should we be worried and scared, or should we be on the spectrum of everything will be fine, new jobs will be created, we'll be okay?
Both.
Both.
So if you're one of these people who are getting aced out of your work because a machine can do it faster, cheaper, and better, that's not good. if you're somebody who gets the benefit of that, it's very good.
Today's leading companies understand the importance of enhancing the employee experience. To maintain your competitive advantage and to achieve business goals, retaining top talent is absolutely paramount to your success. That's why, and something that I've said many times over the years, is why IT and HR have to partner together to create great experiences for their workers. And if you are ready to separate from the pack, you can start with a report from VMware. And to get access to that report, you can visit vmware.com/employee-experience. And by the way, on that URL, you can also sign up to get a copy of my upcoming book, The Future Leader, where I interviewed over 140 CEOs around the world to figure out what it's going to take to be a leader in the next decade and beyond. So if you want to get access to that report and to get a free copy of my upcoming book, again, the URL is vmware.com/employee-experience. And now back to the show. So if you're the CEO of the company who's implementing that, it's good for you. But if you are the worker, it's bad for you.
Glad you brought up that division. I think that we cannot allow the benefits, the riches that AI can possibly give us, all to line the pockets of the 1%. This is just immoral, unethical, and think about it. Do you really want people at the front gates with their torches? People are going to respond very badly to being cut out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't remember the names of these committees and coalitions that are being formed, but I know a lot of CEOs are trying to put together ethics groups and privacy groups on AI. Like there's a lot of stuff going on around that. But speaking of ethics, a lot of people say that we don't really have yet ethics for AI. We don't have any, I guess, rules or regulations for it. So it's kind of just a free-for-all at the moment. Does anything about AI worry you or freak you out a little bit?
I like to think that the thing that really worries me is the thing that I'm not smart enough to anticipate. What we see in front of us as a problem, that can be dealt with. And it is being dealt with, by the way. Yes, there are many, many efforts to think about ethics in AI, think about public welfare in AI, think about the common weal, which AI can so contribute to. And this has been going on for a long time, mostly by people in the field itself. Now other people, that is researchers in the field, I should make that very clear. Now there's pressure on the firms who use AI, or in many cases create AI, to also pay attention to the ethics. And it's very fluid. No question, it's very fluid because the field is fluid. And we're not going to get it right the first time. We're probably not even going to get it right the second time, but we're going to get it right.
Eventually. Well, you would hope. You would certainly hope that we would that we would get it right. So
for our own state.
Yeah. So you don't think the whole Skynet, Terminator thing is happening, right?
I hope not.
Hopefully not.
But it could.
Yeah. Hopefully not, but it might. So just in case, keep some money and some food underneath your mattress. So it's been really, really interesting, I think, probably for you to chronicle sort of 60 years of AI, of where we've gone and where we've been. What about where we're going? Ray Kurzweil talks about the singularity, and we're going to have a human intelligence. What did he say, by 2025 or something like that?
No, he moved it up to the 40s.
2040s. But still, I mean, we're talking about like 15, 20 years. That's not that long. It's I have a 3-year-old, so basically by the time she's hopefully gonna get married, she'll be 21, 22, 23. That means there's gonna be some automaton running around with human intelligence. That's a little scary.
We are facing some interesting challenges. Yes. Ray's view is a little different from mine. I see it happening in bits and pieces. He sees us waking up one morning and, the machines are smarter than we are.
Let's hope that's not how it goes.
It won't, because already in some tasks, the machines are smarter than we are. It hasn't brought the world to an end. Will it happen that all such things will, all tasks will be done better by machines? No, it won't. Let me give you a for instance. The really good thing about your doctor is how he reassures you. He promises you that he's going to do everything to make you comfortable. He knows that there's a solution to your problem. And if there isn't a solution to your problem, we're all in this together. And he might even take your hand and say, everything's going to be fine. Only human beings can do that for human beings. So what's going to happen is a transformation of the professions. And you will see, doctors being the obvious example, we won't be putting them through 4 years of incredibly hard medical school and residency and all that stuff. They won't have to memorize that. It's in a black box. The papers have already been written by the researchers. I'm talking about clinicians here who are face-to-face with their patients. And they get to do what humans do best, which is person-to-person things. And yes, they have this underpinning helping them automatic. And they can look at what the machines have discovered about this particular disorder and look at what kinds of things might cure this disorder or mitigate it. And they can say, we can help you. We can help you. And that's what you want to hear. You want to hear somebody across the desk from you saying, we can help you. Yeah. And not some disembodied voice saying, oh, your machine is here to help you.
When you look at a lot of the AI conversations today, do you think it's a little bit overhyped? I know, for example, Elon Musk and Jack Ma recently just had a big debate. I can't remember where it was. Maybe it was in China. But they had such opposing views that, it was shocking. They were like not even on the same page at all.
I saw the reports of that debate, and I have to say I was on both sides. Yeah, it could be devastating. It could be, I'm probably more on Jack Ma's side. It could be just wonderful. And we got to put our foot down and make sure it's just wonderful. Now, Elon Musk is sort of an extremist in some ways. And when he was really ranting and raving about AI about 3 years ago, I thought, have you put your smartphone down yet? Come on. We love what AI does for us positively. And that little phone you carry around in your pocket or your handbag, that is AI top to bottom. It's 30-year-old AI, 40-year-old AI, but it's AI. You're not going to do without it.
I know you've also written a couple science fiction books, and I love science fiction. I love Isaac Asimov, and I've been consuming all of it. He's probably my favorite science fiction author.
Oh, Jacob, I'm sorry to disappoint you. They're fiction about science, not
fiction about science. Sorry. But you've imagined several different worlds for the future. So when you look like, 10, 20 years out, do you imagine a kind of a utopian world where we're working, a couple hours a week and we have universal basic income and robot assistants and everything is just kind of wonderful and fine and dandy? Or do you imagine a slightly different world?
Well, I'm afraid I imagine a slightly different world because we are human and we are not going to change our stripes. We can make trouble anywhere. And we have a good way of doing that because we get disputatious, we get jealous, we do this, we do that. So it's not going to be paradise, but it's going to be a lot easier for a lot more people. And, that gets to one of the things that really makes me unhappy about people like Musk who say, oh, we've just got to stop AI. And I'm thinking, you live in a privileged society and you live a life of great privilege in that society. Who are you to say nobody gets the benefits of AI because it might have some bad effects? There is a world of need out there that AI could supply. And it's not up to us, privileged white people and privileged white men, to say, oh, no, sorry, we're not going to have that because, there are dangers. Well, yes, of course there are dangers. But, boy, think of the benefits.
Yeah, I love your kind of approach or attitude to it. It's sort of like, there are dangers with everything in life. And it's kind of, I guess, how you approach it and how you choose to use these different things that makes the difference.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
When you say benefits, what are some of the areas where you see the greatest benefits of AI?
Well, medicine, for one. I mean, my wonderful primary care guy, he can't keep up with all that stuff. What if he had a black box on his desk that said, oh, here's Pamela again, and here's the problem she had last time, and look what we've discovered since. We can really fix that. And he doesn't have to have stayed up till midnight learning all this stuff because he knows I'm coming in the next morning. Medicine is a great example. Eric Horvitz, who is a vice president at Microsoft, maybe even higher than that, I don't know. Anyway, Eric is not only a PhD, one of the early researchers in AI, but also an MD. And I met him at the Stanford Medical School when he was trying to bring AI into medicine. He has figures for the number of lives we lose because we don't have AI in medical systems. And we're talking tens of thousands. We're not talking a handful. So almost everywhere you look, there are needs to be filled by good AI.
You mentioned that we don't know what will happen. It could kind of be great things, could be some scary things. So what do we do when we don't know? I mean, what as individuals, as leaders of companies, I mean, when we see all these different reports, and I'm sure you've seen many of them, that all these jobs are going to be replaced, what do we do? I mean, we got to take some action. So what's the right thing?
I think we should pay great attention to the ethicists who are becoming involved in AI. We should pay great attention to people who are standing aside and don't have a vested interest in making money from it. Those people they're looking at this very hard right now, and they're in dispute with each other. You will hear one person say, the idea of weaponized AI, what an awful idea. And then there are people like me who said, I went through World War II. I don't think it's a bad idea, with some big exceptions. So no, we have to go very deliberately. And when the first signs of trouble start, we got to respond to that trouble. We can't just say, oh, well, that's life. No. We can respond. There's no reason why we can't.
Yeah. And are you worried at all about like the hacking, the cybersecurity implications of? I mean, we even see that today, just with like people getting credit card numbers and hacking into like Target and all these different companies.
Oh, absolutely. Am I worried? Yeah, I carry my credit cards in a little Faraday cage, so to speak, a little wallet that has wire that keeps them from being read. But that's only one way of hacking my credit card. They can hack 100 ways. It's a problem. We got to deal with it. We can deal with it. We can't prevent it entirely, but we can deal with it.
How long do you think before we see some of these major breakthroughs, like a fully self-driving car, human level intelligence, some sort of a smart assistant that can exhibit some sort of emotional or human intelligence? How far away do you think some of these things are?
Well, let's start with the car. And as far as I'm concerned, not soon enough. I would love to be driven places and read my book. But that's going to be a while. I know we have great enthusiasm for it. Now, I'm enthusiastic myself, but it is going to be really a hard problem to solve. And we're going to start probably with trucking, because the trucks will be on major highways where you're not likely to have a kid running out in the middle of the street or chasing a ball or any of the 101 things that happen to you on a city street. Absolutely autonomous cars where I can, call my automatic Uber and say, okay, I'm ready to go, and have it show up. Oh, I'm afraid I'm not going to live to see that. But then, Jacob, I didn't think I'd live to see what I'm seeing. So I could be wrong.
And what about some sort of human level intelligence?
There are lots of programs that exhibit human level intelligence in a human kind of way. I was looking at some projects at MIT a few months ago, and what was the thing they were trying to do? They were trying to teach robots how to respect human space. Now, this is really a matter of intelligence. You don't think about it. Did Einstein know about human space? No. This is, how do you react with other humans around you? When do they feel crowded? When do they need someone close by? This is stuff that's got to be learned. And so they're teaching robots that. And one project is at MIT. That's a funny kind of human intelligence, but it is part of human intelligence. And by the way, that's very cultural. If you travel around the world, you see that Western ideas of human space are quite different in China or in Africa. If I lived in New York for 40 years, hey, each other on the sidewalks. Westerners, San Franciscans wouldn't put up with that. Yeah.
It's funny. You as a human really don't think too much about that, but for a robot, for some sort of AI, that's like very basic stuff that it actually needs to think about. Space, human
yes,
space,
it does. And how to conduct a conversation, when to shut up.
A lot of humans don't know that either.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, like I was at a restaurant the other day, and my wife and I were eating dinner at a San Francisco restaurant, and we were amazed that the waiter knew just the right amount of time to make his presence known, start a friendly conversation, and then quickly leave so as not to overextend his welcome. And that's a very human intelligent thing to know how to do. Like, how can you read the room and know when the conversation is over, you should move on? And it's hard to imagine AI learning that.
It's hard to imagine, but there are people working on it. Whether they will succeed anytime soon, who knows?
Yeah.
But the fact that it's recognized as an intelligence problem, it is.
And there's so many different components of AI, right? I mean, people talk about machine learning, they talk about AI, they talk about AGI, which is a concept I keep hearing about. They talk about self-directed learning, autonomous. I mean, there's so many different terms and concepts floating around. Does it all live under the AI umbrella?
It does these days. During the time when there were problems with IPOs going bust and stuff like that, people didn't want to talk about artificial intelligence. The phrase was poison. And so they talked about, machine cognition or whatever. There were a whole bunch of phrases. These are all different approaches to intelligence. And it turns out in this kludgy thing called the human mind, can I use a word like kludgy on this?
Yep, you can use whatever you want.
This kludgy thing called the human mind. We use all these different things. We have algorithms that know what to do and when and know when the algorithm isn't going to work. That's pretty smart. We do things very slowly when we're in a novel situation. Blah blah blah. Everything is in there, and lucky us.
Yeah. Well, I know we only have a couple minutes left, so I thought it would be interesting maybe to just look a little bit more at some of the history stuff, because one of the things that I'm really interested in is, like, I'm trying to imagine what it was like to work on AI in a world where there was no internet, there was no cell phones. A lot of the things that we use now to study AI and to work on AI, I mean, we have amazing resources. So what was it like to solve some of these complex problems without even having the internet, without having a cell phone?
That's too funny.
I'm just trying to imagine what it was like.
Well, it was much slower, of course, because the way you traded information was by scientific papers or by showing up body to body in a formal meeting. Professional meetings, people would exchange ideas and so on and so forth, like that.
Do you have any favorite stories over the course of your 60-plus career in the AI space that you like to share?
Oh my gosh, my whole book is full of them.
I know. A lot of these
I didn't dare put in my formal writing, but I thought this may be my last shot, so I can tell all this stuff.
Which one stands out the most for you?
A journal. Oh, there is none that stands out. But I will tell you this: I was, a very naive, as I say, English major, and by the time I started writing Machines Who Think, I was a professor of English at the University of Pittsburgh. And I would go to these people and say, I want to ask you about your work because I'm writing a history of AI. And these guys were at the top of their research careers. I'm at the peak. And they stopped and they explained things to me. And they were so patient with me. It was just, I was awed at the time, and I'm even more awed now that they did this. It was astounding, and to my benefit.
Is the culture different today in the AI space, you think?
I don't know. I hope some young Pamela McCorduck is going around interviewing the people who are making AI so that we know.
There are more women in this space now, it seems.
Oh, much more, yeah.
Which is great.
Not as many as I thought. And as I was looking at my book, many of the people I talked to are women because it just happened. And the pictures are not predominantly, but there are a lot more pictures of women scientists than men scientists in my book than there usually are in books about science. And I thought, well, I didn't do it deliberately, but strike one for us.
Yeah.
We talk to each other and we support each other. It's very nice.
For people listening to this podcast, and they might be individual contributors, they might be managers at companies, just trying to understand what AI means for themselves as individuals, like for your job, for your career. Are there any steps that you think we should be taking? Is there anything that we should be doing as individuals to make sure that we can stay relevant in the future?
Oh, good. You're asking a woman who's well past security. What you need to look at is what part of your job can be automated and what part of your job is really human-to-human stuff, where you are talking to other human beings, you are helping other human beings. Helping, that's a nice concept. That will give you a clue as to how things are going to go. Let me tell you one story. This isn't even in the book. When I got to New York, I lost my tenure thrash, by the way, over Machines Who Think, because my colleagues in the English department said, she's sold out to the machines. Okay. So,
wait, you lost your tenure?
Well, I didn't have tenure. I was up for tenure. And when the time came, should we or should we not, I was told, come back next year, maybe. And I thought, no.
What? Wait, because of your book?
Yeah.
What? So because you were writing a book on AI, they said, we don't want to give you tenure here.
A book about artificial... Well, with computers, come on. That's not the humanities.
Crazy.
But that's not the story I wanted to tell you. The story I wanted to tell you is I got to New York and I started writing for what we knew in those days as the slick magazines, the slicks. And one of the magazines I wrote for was Cosmopolitan, which was great fun. I loved working for those people. So I would usually do what they asked me to do, but then I proposed to Helen Gurley Brown that, you should do a story on office automation, because all these young women who are reading your magazine, they ought to know that word processing is coming and this is happening and that's happening. And she looked at me as if I was nuts. That was another one. No, this isn't important.
Wow. So they never ran it, huh?
No.
Wow. And of course, everybody knows that magazine now. It's super but it's funny that so many of these magazines and publications now, the AI conversation is everywhere. Like,
yes, it is.
Literally, anytime you look at the news, you turn on the TV, it is everywhere. So it's really amazing that so many people ridiculed it years ago, and now it's kind of like, the new electricity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's been an amazing thing to live through and live up to. Just see this happen around me.
Well, hopefully it will make organizations and us more human. It sounds like that's your advice, is to focus a lot on the human stuff, the relationships, the connections.
Absolutely.
I was talking to, who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody at a company, and he said that they even teach their employees now very basic things like how to shake someone's hand properly, how to look them in the eye, how to even have a conversation with them. And I was thinking, my God, like these are like the most basic human things that you could teach anybody. And the fact that we're teaching them to employees, I couldn't decide if it was either a good thing or if it was really weird that we're having to teach employees these things. Like, we're so reliant on technology that we forgot how to shake somebody's hand and look them in the eye.
Yes. Sad but true. And this is worthwhile learning. This is worthwhile for people to know about.
Yeah. Well, I guess the lesson there for everyone is don't forget the things that make you human.
That's right. You gave that example of the waiter. That is high intelligence, that he perceives how not to be intrusive, but to be helpful. Boy, big difference.
And it's funny because most people wouldn't think of that as being intelligence. Like, most people, when they think of AI and intelligence, they think of beating a chess master or beating somebody at Go. But if you were to tell people, hey, this piece of AI knows when to leave the room, you're kind of like, what? Like, so?
Exactly. No, these things that we do, and we don't do them automatically. Our parents had to teach us.
Yeah. Well, Pamela, those were all the questions I had for you. I don't know if there's anything else, any last parting words of wisdom you would like to bestow upon the listeners of the podcast.
I am so envious of the younger people who are going to live into this world that's saturated with AI. I think it's going to be really good if we play our cards right.
Let's hope.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I like the optimism. And Pamela, thank you for taking time out of your day to share this fascinating history of AI. I think you're probably the only person I've ever talked to who's had this broad experience and who's seen this evolution of AI over the last 60 years. So I love your stories and your insights and your examples. Thank you.
Thanks very much for having me.
And thanks everyone for tuning in. My guest again has been Pamela McCorduck, and make sure to check out her new book, which I had a chance to read an advanced copy of, and it's got all sorts of really cool stories. And the book again is called This Could Be Important: My Life and Times with the Artificial Intelligentsia. I will see all of you next week. Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Work podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please do me a favor and rate and review the show on iTunes or whatever your preferred podcast platform is. And remember, if you want to take your education even further by getting access to courses based on some of the themes that I explore in this show, then check out futureofworkuniversity.com. If you're interested in being added to my newsletter, you can do that by visiting thefutureorganization.com/newsletter. And you can also get in touch with me directly if you have any inquiries for podcast sponsorships, working with me, or having me keynote your next event. My email is jacob@thefutureorganization.com. I will see you next week.